Okay, welcome back, class. So we have tried to see the different kind of applications that are being attempted in other language, especially in English, and also in other languages, which are mostly solved. Some are making progress, and some are still very difficult or hard for computational linguistics or NLP. So, as I said, solving a language-related problem is the main concern of natural language processing, okay, or what we call computational linguistics, or sometimes we also have speech recognition and synthesis. So, solving such kind of language-related problems for the purpose of, making the computer to understand and process a language is what we call NLP application. And there are very few, there are many applications. At the end of this class, we're going to see many lists, but like spelling correction is a natural language processing application. On word processor, for instance, we have a spelling corrector. So the first task to be done is first to identify that there is an error in the spelling. Then the next thing is to suggest a correction. And spelling correction is a computational linguistic application. Even grammar checking, we know that in a word processor, if the words that you put side by side or adjacent to one another is not proper, then we know that a word processor is going to underline it with blue to show you that these words are not supposed to be put together because of a grammatical problem they have. And checking the grammar as well as suggesting a grammatical correction is an NLP application. Information retrieval. Information retrieval is concerned about retrieving documents that are talking about the topic you are interested about. And the topics are identified by the words. The words that you use will tell you the topic of the document. It will also tell you the topic of the query, or the user need is going to be expressed by words, and words are going to carry some semantic meaning. So whenever you want to retrieve information, looking into the words that are used in the query at the same time, the words that are used in the document are very important. Machine translation is another huge and very fertile NLP application. We have many thousands of languages in the world, and converting a text written in one language to a text in another language is a very hot research area and a very hot application area. So machine translation is one of a widely exercised NLP application. We also have a speech processing system. If you see your phone, if you see your computer, there are some applications that will help you to convert the speech into a text. And there are also applications that would read out a written text, like a text might be written, you might have a Word document, and reading that document using a computer application is a common kind of NLP application that we have. So there are many NLP applications that are, that uses a computational linguistic program, a program that is used to manipulate human language, either in a written or in a spoken form. So whenever you want to do an NLP application, you have to actually understand the knowledge, the level of knowledge in a language. Okay, knowing the level of the level of knowledge in a language would help you to, write or to come up with an application program using a computational method. So the task being, or the task that you're going to do is being able to analyze an incoming audio signal or receiving an exact sequence of words. Recovering or generating, the required sound for the words that are written, okay? And to do that, we use the knowledge of the language, which you call is phonetics and phonology. These are concerned about the speech. These are concerned about the sound. And they will help us either to pronounce, a text, or they will also help us to convert some kind of speech to a written form. And phonetics and phonology are concerned about sound. We are going to make a distinction later on, but what we call phonetics is how the human vocal tract creates the sound. We know that humans are equipped with a vocal tract, which are very interacting organs in our vocal tract that are used to create the sound, okay? So the way you create the sound S and the way you create the sound Z, or the way you create the sound n or d or f are quite different. You have to use different organs of the vocal tract to create those sounds. So the study of how those sounds are formed by the human vocal tract is what we call phonetics. So phonetics is not language specific, okay? Phonetics is concerned about, the inventory of all sounds that can be created by the human being. Some of the sounds, for instance, might be in Amharic, or they might exist in Amharic, but not in English. Some of them might exist in Swahili, but not in Afan Oromo. Some of them might exist in Ge'ez, but not in any other language. So it doesn't concern itself with sounds being specific to a language. It's concerned about all sounds that can be created by human beings. And for that, later on, we are going to talk about what we call the International Phonetic Alphabet, which is concerned about all the sounds in the world, okay? That's why we call it International Phonetic Alphabet, or IPA. When it comes to the second part, which is phonology, phonology is somehow related with phonetics, because phonology is also concerned about sounds. But in this case, it's concerned about those sounds that are specific to the language. For instance, we don't generate some of the sounds that exist in the world. Most of the sounds in the world might not exist in Amharic, for instance. We don't have the sound, they call it the click. It's a language, it is a sound that's created by the language in South Africa. Okay, there is a click where you are going to create, by attaching your tongue to the top of your mouth. So in that case, whenever you create the click, it has its own, meaning for, it has its own meaning for the language. Like you can say Osa. Osa is the language, but we don't have that in Amharic. We don't use it, right? But it exists. It exists as part of, the sound study. So phonetic is concerned about how that sound is created, but phonology is concerned about the sounds in the language and how those sounds are going to be, ordered to pronounce something. So these are the two types of, sound-related studies or knowledge of a language: phonetics and phonology. The other level of language that we have is morphology. So morphology is concerned about, the forms of the word. So producing and recognizing, okay, variations of individual words is what we call morphology. Morph means part. So morphology is concerned about parts of the word. For instance, if you are given this word, doors, you're going to say this is plural because it ends with S, right? But what if I give you the word boss? What do you say? Is it in a plural form? Is it in a plural form? Of course it's not. So just because it ends with S, it doesn't mean that it's in a plural form. And recognizing this difference is the study of morphology. So morphology tries to capture information about the shape and the behavior of words. It's concerned about how words are formed. So there are different ways of creating a word in English, in Amharic, in Afan Oromo, in Wolaita, in Sidama, in Kafenono, in Ge'ez, in Swahili, in Arabic. In many languages, the way you create words are quite different. The way you attach something to a word or to the stem is quite different to create different kind of variants of the word. So studying that is what we call morphology. So morphology is concerned about how words are formed. The other one is syntax. Mind you, this is the fourth one. We have talked about phonetics, we have talked about phonology, and we have talked about morphology. Mind you, each of them would be discussed in a separate chapter later on. But this is just to give you an overview understanding of what language and NLP are concerned about. So syntax is a knowledge needed to order and to group words together. It's not only concerned about the order, but also the grouping. As we said earlier, if you remember, we had some morphological challenge. Like if you say, if you say rajim, makina, adabi, whenever you do that, the way you order them is important, right? What if I say adabi, rajim, makina? Does it give the same sense? These two sentences do not give the same sense, right? Mabrit? Mabrit? Mabrit?
Yes.
Do these two sentences give you the same sense?
No, not give the same sense.
I can't hear you, Mabrit.
Not give the same sense.
Why? Why not?
Because the first one represents the person who washing very big
Or
car,
tall, right?
and the second one.
The second one is just a random order. At Abi, Rejim Mekina. So it doesn't make sense. So it tells you that the way you order words is very important to communicate or to give a meaning. But even if the word is the same, the word order is the same, the way you group them, like if I group them in such a way, okay? If I group them in such a way, the meaning would be quite different, right? If I say, this is the way I want to group them. If I say, this is the way I want to group them, then as you can see, the meaning would be different. In the first case, it is a car that is long, and I have a person who washes a long car or a long vehicle. In the second case, it is a person who washes the car who is tall, because I said Adabi is a person who washes something, and if you put Mekina before it, it means this person is washing car. So we say he's a person that washes a car. So it is a name of a person, or a name of, it's an object, or we can say it's a noun. Then that object is tall. So the grouping is also will make some, variants of a meaning. The meaning of a sentence can be affected by not only by the order, but also by the grouping. And the study of such kind of constructs is what we call syntax. So as we said, it is concerned about the order of the words, at the same time, the grouping of the words. So for instance, if you have this sentence, I am, I do, sorry, that, afraid, Dave, I am, can't, you know that you have all the words, but the order is not the same. So this sentence we say is syntactically wrong. But if I reorder it in such a way, Dave, I'm sorry, I'm afraid I cannot do that, then it gives you a perfect meaning. So the way you order them and the way you group them would affect the meaning that it conveys. Sometimes it might be totally incorrect. For instance, in Amharic, you can say Bete Hejje Metallo, or you can say Metallo Bete Hejje. As you can see, the change in the order didn't create that much of a variance. But if you see the third one, Hejje Metallo Bete, the meaning would be a bit different. In the first two cases, Bete Hejje Metallo Malatum. First, I'll go to my home, then I'll come. The second one, Metallo Bete Hejje, is the same. Bete Hedena, then I'm going to come. But the third one, Hejje Metallo Bete Malat, Hejje means I'm going to go somewhere, then I'm going to come back to my home. So as you can see, if you change the order, sometimes it would be incorrect, and sometimes it would create a different meaning. So studying such kind of order of words and grouping of words is what we call syntax. And there is a chapter to discuss about syntax and parsing. And we have seen this example, Rejim Mekina Atabi or Adagenya Feres Galabi, where the grouping and the order would create either an incorrect structure, or it would create a different meaning. And studying that is what we call syntax. Mind you, this one is the fourth, right? We talked about phonetics, phonology, morphology, and now syntax. And here, we also have what we call semantics. Semantics is concerned about the meaning, knowledge of a meaning of a component of the word. So sometimes a single word can mean so many things. We have seen an example of the word Ganna. We have seen the example of bank. We have the example of the word so. We have the example of the word bat, which might mean either a flying bird, or it might mean also an equipment that you use to play baseball, a bat, the stick that they used to play the game. And we also have what we call compositional semantics. Whenever you put two words together, the meaning we might have a different you know, or it might have a different meaning. Like if you have the word data and base, if you put them together, it doesn't mean a data which is a base. It doesn't mean that. It means a repository that you use to manage organizational data. If you have the word girl and friend, if you put them together, it doesn't mean a friend who is a girl. It is more intimate than that. So that's what we call is compositional semantics. When two or more words come together, then they might create another meaning, you know, which is different from the sum of the two meanings, okay? So these are what we call compositional semantics. So semantics is another one, mind you. So this is going to be the fifth, right? We have phonetics, phonology, morphology, syntax, and semantics. So we have the fifth level of language understanding. The other one is pragmatics. Pragmatics is concerned about the appropriate or an indirect use of a language. So which one are we referring to? A sentence or a phrase that seems to be polite or direct might have an indirect meaning based on the intention of the person who speaks. For instance, if I say, "Pa governor," does it mean you are really brilliant? It might not. What if I say, "You score 2 out of 15, pa, you are smart"? So the word smart doesn't actually mean that you are intelligent. I'm being sarcastic. So, you know, people can use a language to mean different things. And such kind of a study is what we call pragmatics. You can say, "So, you are brilliant." It doesn't mean, or it might not mean that you are really bright. It doesn't mean, it might not mean that you are really brilliant. You have to look into the context in which I'm uttering these words. And this study is what we call pragmatics. The last one is discourse. Discourse is concerned about a larger conversation. It's not confined to a word, a phrase, or a sentence. It has to go, you know, beyond that. So knowledge of correctly structuring this, such as, you know, intonation, gesture, style, speech act, so and so, is very important. For instance, if I say, "Dave, I'm sorry, I'm afraid I cannot do that," what is the word that? What is that referring to? Maybe there is something else. What if you have a sentence of such a form, okay? What if I say, "I like it," sorry, "I like it a lot." What if you have this sentence? What do I like a lot? Huh? I have read it. What if you have this one? "I have read it. I like it a lot." Still, the word "it" is not resolved, right? Okay. But what if I say, "I bought the book by Abebe"? Now, if I have these three sentences, I bought a book by Abebe, I have read it, I liked it. Now you know that the word "it" is referring to the book by Abebe. But what if you don't have this sentence? Then the word "it" is very difficult to understand. So sometimes to understand the context or to understand words, you might look into the previous construct, the previous sentence, the previous phrase. And this is what we call is a discourse. Discourse is higher than a word, higher than a phrase, higher than a sentence. So you have to understand the topic of conversation, you know, to give meaning for, you know, some part of the sentence. And doing such kind of analysis is what we call discourse analysis. So you have to remember all these levels of language understanding. So just to summarize those, this is what we have. Knowledge in language processing might be concerned about phonetics and phonology, which is a study of the linguistic sounds. The first one is concerned about how sounds are created. And the second one is concerned about, in a specific language, how words are going to be ordered and pronounced, okay? Or how sounds are going to be ordered and pronounced. The second one, or we can say the third one, is concerned about morphology. Morphology is a study of the meaningful components of the word in a written form. So it's concerned about the parts and their relationship. Okay, so as we said earlier, if you have words like, let's say, walking, then we know that it has two parts, the word work and the part ing. So ing is concerned about, making it progressive, whereas work is concerned about the action of, taking a step. But we know that you cannot further decompose this word, right? The word woken, can we decompose it in such a way? We can't, because we know that WA and LK are not meaningful. So they have to be attached to one another. But whenever you do it in such a way, then you know that work has some meaning. But ing can be, separated, because you know that it has a linguistic function. Because not only ing, but I can also have ed. In this case, it's going to be walked, or it can be walk plus s, walks, he walks, she walks. So we know that such kind of, looking into the parts of the word and their relationship is very important. What if I say, what if I say this? What do you understand? Can you separate them or divide it into different parts?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Three parts.
Yeah. ጮክ በይ።
አልን ለብቻና ሰበርኩም ሁለት ቦታ መክፈል እንችላለን።
እሺ ሌላስ?
ሶስት ቦታም ሊሆን ይችላል።
እንደዚህ ማለት ነው። እንደዚህ ባረገው
እሱ ሰበር
ይቻላል
ይሆናል አይደል? ለምሳሌ ከዚህ ውስጥ ምን ሊወጣ ይችላል? ሰበር ሊመጣ ይችላል፣ ኩ ሊመጣ ይችላል፣ አልና ም ሊመጡ ይችላሉ። ለምሳሌ አልና ምን አንድ ላይ ብታያቸው in English it means not. Who means the subject is first person singular ነው ማለት ነው አይደለ? Because what if I change ku to k?
second person singular
ይሆናል። ይሄን ጊዜ ምን ይሆናል? second person ሲንጉላር እና ማስኩሊን ይሆናል ማለት ነው። አልሰበርክም እያልኩ ነው አንተን ማለት ነው አይደል? Okay, so we know that it has all these parts. It has sabbar, which is the action of breaking. It has ku, which indicates the first person singular subject. Al and me are the negative markers. What if I don't have al and me? It means sabbar. It means I have broken something. It's just like that. Like you can say break, then you can say I did not break. So I is referring to ku, did not is referring to al and me, and break is referring to sabbar malet. So as you can see, in different languages, the way words are formed are quite different. And studying this is what we call morphology. And if you understand morphology, writing a computational program to create new words or to understand words would be, an easier task. So that's what we call is morphology. When it comes to syntax, syntax is concerned about the study of the structural relationship between words, word order, and their relationship. Because even though the spelling is correct, even though the words are formed correctly, the way you order them and the way they interrelate with one another is a very important linguistic information. And studying that is what we call syntax. Semantics, as we have said earlier, is the study of the meaning, and most specifically, contextual meaning of a word. So whenever you use a word in a sentence, it has a meaning, but that meaning depends on the words that co-occur with it. And studying that is what we call semantics. The other is pragmatics. Pragmatics is a study of how language is used to accomplish a specific goal. And this goal is a goal of the speaker, okay? What is the speaker want to achieve? If you remember previously, I said for a person who scored 2 out of 15, if I say, wow, you are smart, I'm trying to achieve some objective. I'm trying to accomplish a goal. My goal is to tell that person that his grade is not good. But to mean that, I used words that are actually the opposite. For a person who scored 2 out of 15, if I say you are smart, then I'm telling him that he's not. But mind you, the words that I used are totally different. But the way I express it, the way I used it in the context will show my intention. It shows what I intended to achieve. So the study of how language is to accomplish a goal. It is interested about the meaning by the speaker. It's not the meaning by the dictionary. It's not concerned about the meaning by the listener, rather than the meaning by the speaker. And we also call it the speech acts. And this study is what we call pragmatic, which is a higher level of language study. The last one is discourse. The idea in discourse is meaning cannot be confined to a single word or couple of phrases or even a sentence. To identify the meaning, sometimes you have to go beyond the sentence. You have to see the topic. You have to see how sentences are coherent with one another to give you a meaning. So the study of the linguistic unit, larger than a single utterance, larger than a sentence, or about a topic, or about a flow or a coherence in a language is what we call discourse. Discourse means a larger conversation. So please remember all these different levels of knowledge of a language. Phonetics and phonology, which are concerned about sounds. Morphology, concerned about how words are formed. Syntax, concerned about how words are ordered and grouped. Semantic, which is concerned about the meaning of a word and a phrase or a sentence. Pragmatic, which is concerned about the speaker's meaning in a conversation. And discourse, which is a meaning greater than a sentence. It is more concerned about the topic. And these are the different levels of study. And we know that during our courses, we are going to go through, most of the time, we go through morphology, syntax, and semantics. But when we speak about, or when we discuss about speech processing, we'll say something about phonology, and sometimes we'll talk about pragmatics. But most of the time, we'll spend our, we are going to have a chapter on morphology, syntax, and semantics in this course, okay? Now, next to this, let's discuss the different kind of steps that we have in NLP application. The first one is, what if you want to process a textual data, a data that is in a written form, which is represented using symbols that we have in the language. Like if it is Afan Oromo, then we are going to use the Latin script. If it is Amharic, Tigrinya, Guarani, or other language, which belong to the Semitic in this case, we might use the Ethiopic script. If it is Arabic, we are going to use the Arabic. If it is English, we are going to, or Walaita language, we are going to use, the Latin script. And, all languages have their own scripting method. Some of them share common scripting method. Some of them might have their own scripting method. So what are the different kind of stages that we have in textual data? The first one is morphological analysis, which means it's concerned about individual words are analyzed into their components, as we have said earlier. If you have the word al-tasabbarkum, then identifying al, sabbar, ku, and me is what we call a morphological analysis. And for each of these segments, we are going to analyze their meaning. Because if you analyze the meaning, then you can get the whole meaning of the word. After you do that, then you go to a syntactic analysis. Like if the word formation is correct, then you have to look into a sequence of words will be transformed into a structure that shows how words are going to be related to one another. Okay, so the word might have a correct spelling or morphologically correct, but if you put it with another word which it doesn't belong to, then such kind of analysis is what we call a syntactic analysis, or we call it analyzing the syntax of the structure. Next to that, you have to look into the semantic. So the spelling might be correct, the order might be correct, but the meaning that's derived from that combination might not be correct. So understanding or analyzing the meaning of a word or a phrase or a structure is what we call semantic analysis. So transformation is made from the input text to the internal representation that reflects the meaning. As we said earlier, sometimes the morphology might be correct, the syntax might be correct, but the semantic might be challenging. The other one is pragmatics. Even though the words are correct, even though the spelling is correct, even though the structure is correct, even though the meaning from the dictionary is correctly identified, but the meaning that the person or the speaker want to convey might not be correct. And we have taken the example earlier, right? For this one, if I say, wow, okay, you are smart, but then it might not mean that you are smart. You have to see the context in which I was uttering these words. So pragmatics is to reinterpret what was said to what was actually meant. This is what was said. The person said this, but does he actually mean this? Is the study of pragmatics. As I said earlier, if you have the sentence before this one, if I say you scored, okay, you scored, let's say 19 out of 20. Kalku wow, you are smart. Then you know that I mean that you are smart. But if I have the same thing, okay, if I have the same thing in here, but if I say you scored 2 out of 20, and if I say wow, you are smart, then you know that the second wow, you are smart, and the first wow, you are smart, even though the words are the same, the structure is the same, the presentation is the same, they don't mean the same thing. In here, the words mean exactly what they are, because the previous sentence shows me that you scored 19 out of 20. And whenever a person scored that, you know that he's smart. But if you score 2 out of 20, and if I say you are smart, you should know that I do not mean that you are smart. And analyzing such kind of relationship is what we call pragmatic analysis. To interpret what was said to what was actually meant is what we call pragmatics. Then the last one that we have in here is discourse, which is analyzing a meaning greater than a sentence. So resolving reference between sentence is what we call discourse analysis, so that you can identify the topic. So take note of these 5 important steps in textual data: morphology, syntax, semantics, pragmatics, and discourse. Then what if the data is in a spoken form? In a spoken form, you are going to have a user, and the user is going to produce an analog or a sound wave, and converting that sound wave into a text is what we call speech recognition. So whenever you speak, if the computer converts that into a text, that's what we call a speech recognition. So you can do it for Amharic, for Afan Oromo, for Tigrinya, for any other language, but you have to understand how the sound will be converted to a written form. Then once it is recognized, in here, it means you are going to have the text, okay? If you have a speech recognizer, you are going to have a textual form. Then this text should be having a semantic interpretation. It has to be changed to the meaning. Once the meaning is changed, you have to also look into the discourse. You have to identify the topic, so that you'll give an answer to this one. You have to understand in what kind of conversation, in what kind of topic the words are uttered. Then after that, for these, you have to go to the dialogue manager, because in a dialogue system, you are conversing with a machine. Then the dialogue manager is going to produce a response, okay? The response to be given, and this is going to be given to the speech synthesis. The speech synthesis is going to do the opposite of the speech recognizer, which means it's going to receive the text, okay? And the text, okay, is going to be converted into a sound wave. So the computer is going to produce a sound so that you can hear it through the computer speaker. And these steps are the stages that we have in a speech data processing or in a dialogue system. So we have a user who produces a sound wave, which is going to be converted into the text. The text is going to be converted into a meaning interpretation. That meaning is going to be converted into the discourse. Then after that, the discourse is going to be given to the dialogue manager so that it would identify the response to be given. Then the response will be generated. Finally, that response in a textual form is going to be converted into a sound. And these are the stages that we have in a speech processing system. So I think this is going to be the second session, the end of the second session. Let's see how it goes on.